on this week's episode of the Jesse T Show, Beau Billington. Beau, welcome to the show, sir.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure to connect with you. I know that, we seems like a lot of my connections these days have been coming through LinkedIn, and some really good ones too. And so, we connected a few times over the phone, and we were supposed to be in person today at my office, but babysitting fell through. So now we're doing this Zoom call. So I wanted to plug into you and share your journey a little bit with the world, and just have a badass conversation, man. So just for some context, if you could tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about kind of like you and your story and your background and what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, no worries. Life happens. Life gets in the way. So I can totally appreciate, having a pivot and have a video. Appreciate you having me on the show. So we connected on LinkedIn, I'd say a couple months ago. I think outreach, but it's been a pretty good, relationship since then, networking, et cetera. And in regards to my journey, I don't think it's that different from a lot of the other folks that are out there that have kind of started companies, right? So quite frankly, I started my business 4 years ago, but it really goes back a hell of a lot further than that. I mean, I think ever since I was 16, the thought of entrepreneurship and owning my own thing has really intrigued me and inspired me. In fact, I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs. All three of my uncles, my father, my mother at one point, all had their own companies. And so for me, it was kind of, not a matter of if, more so a matter of when, right? So fast forward to 16, I'm like 36 years old, just built a house, had my second kid, traveled internationally a ton, realized that like life was getting more complicated and not less complicated. And basically it was kind of like a now or never type situation. Right. So had a tough conversation with my wife. And after much urging and much discussion, I put together a plan. This was, 5 years ago, and eventually jumped out of corporate America.
I've been through those tough conversations before, in terms of, with my ex-wife and having to say, hey, we're going from this, predictable status quo to jumping without a parachute and building the parachute on the way down. And that was a hell of a conversation. But I want to touch on that in a second, how that went. But I also want to go back a little bit to what you said about coming up in a family of entrepreneurs. And, for my journey, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life since I was a kid, but I didn't have that. I didn't have that guiding light or beacon. It was just something that was innate in me. So what was it like to have, you said your mother was an entrepreneur at one point, some other family members. What kind of businesses were they running? And what are some of your takeaways from seeing that as a kid growing up that helps you today?
Yeah, so we were a different thing. I mean, at one point, my mom was a bookkeeper. Nothing crazy. My dad was an attorney. One of my uncles had a real estate business, and then a couple of my other uncles were manufacturers reps for big manufacturing grill companies, right? But at any rate, for me, what I was able to see is like every sports, every game I had, practices, my father was there. He may have worked incredibly long hours, but always made it a point to come, and he was beholden to nobody, right? And so I kind of saw that growing up. That was he stressed? Absolutely. But, the ability to kind of break away during the day and go do things was always something that was important to me. And it was actually a driver in me starting a company. As I had my kids, I was like, having somebody tell me that I need to be at a trade show, December 23rd, 6 months from now, right before Christmas is a non-starter for me. Yeah. So that was kind of the impetus. And that's what I saw growing up, where I was like, there may be more to this whole thing than working at corporate America and just, the slog.
Yeah, having that freedom of time and control. And even though, he put in the hours, because that's what it takes a lot of times to scale a company and make it successful, he still had that freedom to be able to say, you know what, my son's game is at 4:00 or whatever it is. And, a lot of people don't have that freedom. A lot of people have to miss out.
But there's also, a flip side of that, right? Whereas you are taking time away from your day to go do things, like you're making it up, right? And any entrepreneur that says there's not sleepless nights, I think is completely full of crap, right? I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. The first 2-3 years I was working mornings, nights, weekends, around the clock, and pre-COVID, right? Life was good. And now I'm basically back kind of to that situation, right? Where I'm up early, I'm working late, I'm about to start encompassing the weekend. So it's not all, roses and puppy dogs. Like there's a lot of work that's actually involved behind the scenes. But, again, I make the time up, just not 9 to 5.
Just like the military, there's always a price for freedom, brother. Even
exactly.
if it's it's the way of life you choose to adopt and to live. And if you want to have those, financial rewards or those freedom rewards or the family rewards of being able to do things maybe that you wouldn't be able to because of the lifestyle it affords you, it's worth it. So it's
Yeah.
give and take, it's push and pull, and it's exciting to go down that path. And so what was it that inspired you to head down your own entrepreneurial journey and your own path? Like, what was the linchpin that said, you know what, I can, maybe some context of what you were doing before, and then
Right.
what led you into what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I mean, pretty easy story. So I was, sold software and services in the Fortune 50, worked for international companies, was traveling a ton, going to trade shows. Basically, somebody told me to go somewhere and do this task, and I did it. I was a worker bee, and I enjoyed my job. I started traveling when I was 27 and did that until I was about 36, 37. 100,000 miles a year, which there's people out there that do a ton more than that, but that's more than most, right?
For sure.
So on the road a lot, and basically, I was sitting in Toronto, and this is a true story. It's December 23rd, 22nd, something like that. Sitting at a bar by myself, had a meeting cancel on me, right? The whole reason that I was in Toronto, and it looked like I was going to get snowed in.
Wow.
And so I was potentially going to miss my first Christmas with my oldest daughter. And so I was sitting there, and I was at the bar watching ESPN, and they're talking about, so-and-so is a free agent, right? And so that kind of spawned the thought process behind my company and what we do. And I was like, how cool would that be if I was a free agent where I worked for, 1, 2, 3, 4 companies as an independent contractor, but ultimately I was in charge, and I could go do my thing, provide value to these companies, right? And so, I literally left Toronto. I made it home for Christmas, right? For those who are worried, made it home, literally left Toronto. And for like a year or 2 years, I just noodled on that idea. I mean, I couldn't shake the thought of being independent, plugging into companies, and ultimately be in charge of my destiny and deciding when I travel, et cetera, and ultimately kind of breaking away from the corporate team, right? Like I couldn't shake it. And so, year, 2 years later, it kind of spawned into something else. And it's still pretty similar to what I just mentioned a second ago, but that was kind of the start of the free agent, which is my company, right? It was Toronto, almost snowed in, and just thinking, hey, there's got to be a different situation for me. I got to be able to find a way that works for me and my family, and what I was doing didn't.
So was it a matter of being in that field and that industry for a while where you learned enough, became dangerous enough to say, you know what, like you've had this entrepreneurial kind of DNA placed within you, coupled with the experience and the practicality of doing that kind of work, and you were inspired? Was that kind of how it all came together, or were you like working towards this? Did you always know that you would be doing something independently?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I always knew I was going to be doing something independently, but it was a matter of I didn't know when, right? Like I had no idea when this whole thing was going to come together. And yeah, with my background, I mean, 15, 16 years in sales at a pretty high level, I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to spin this company up and find success quickly. Now, fast forward to when I actually jumped. I mean, it took me 7 months to actually find my first customer, right? So it's kind of one of those things. I came out walking tall, bold, pounding my chest, ready to roll. And it was way 1,000 times tougher than I thought it would be. It took twice as long and 5 times as much money to actually get a company established and started. I mean, it blew my mind, honestly. Best MBA I ever had was starting a company from nothing, bootstrap myself with zero support from anybody but my family.
Some of the best teachers out there, you have things like pain is a great teacher, experience is a great teacher. And so learning on the fly, you did earn that MBA and you had to sink or swim. I mean, it's tuck tail and go back to corporate or persevere and fight through. And so I think a good segue of how you made that leap to free agency, pun intended, to be able to go do your own thing. You talked about the conversation you had with the missus, and it was kind of uncomfortable or whatever. I've been there before specifically. Yeah. I know how it feels, and I know that dynamic. Tell me a little bit about how that conversation went to go from corporate to independent.
Sure. No, great question. It's funny. I don't know, but it seems like anytime I have like a light bulb moment, it happens around like the holidays, right? So I think this conversation we had was like in December. We were gearing up for holiday break, and basically, I came to a point where I was like, you know what? I've been working on my startup for 2 or 3 years, behind the scenes, nights and weekends, working on a website, working on a business plan. I got it to like 80% of the way where I thought I could actually get it. And I came to the conclusion, it's like, what am I doing? Like, I can't, I'm so busy with kids, so busy with an actual, like corporate job. there's no way that I'm going to be able to kind of, have a side hustle and monetize this and make money. So is this a hobby? Or did I just waste 3 years of my entire life? And so I came to the realization that it was like, I got the business 80% of where I could before jumping. And, in order to get the next 10 or 5%, I had to get out of corporate America and actually try. So couple that with the thought that I kind of realized that, it was now or never. And basically never was not an option for me, right? When I'm 70, 80 years old and I look back, not going for it would be one of the biggest regrets of my life. Right. And so I basically just had an honest conversation with my wife that, hey, this is something that I need to do. If I fail, I could probably find a job pretty quickly and we can, recoup any money that's spent. But if I don't try this, then, I'll never know. And it's going to be a great disappointment. Right. I mean, I'd have to wait for the kids to get out of college. And by that point, I'd be so risk averse, that it'd be a non-starter. So that was a conversation. And finally she's like, if this is what you really need to do, let's figure it out.
Did she test you a little bit to make sure this is what you wanted to do and like kind of hold your feet to the fire? Like, how did that part go?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was definitely some uncomfortable conversations the first couple of months, once I jumped out, right? I mean, my wife's very, very process detail oriented. She's an attorney. So she's very, very like, low level, can jump into details. And I'm very, very, high level type of dreamer guy. Right. Yep. So she brought me down to reality a lot with, looking at the financials and the numbers and am I trending towards my forecast? And quite frankly, for those who are making business plans, behind the scenes to jump out, I mean, just throw that crap out the window. Because anything you forecast, I mean, it's going to be completely wrong.
For sure.
Right. I mean, truly. And so my numbers were off. And so, fast forward, the first 2 months or 3 months were bliss. But then, you get further into it. And it's like, I didn't have a customer. And yeah, it got a little uncomfortable. It got a little tight. But, we talked through it. And, the thing that I've always been, that's always been very, very important to me is transparency and honesty. Right. And so, if you don't have that in a relationship, especially when you're starting a company, you're toast. And so she always knew where I was and still does to this day. We have, checkpoints every week, every other week, just to kind of check in and see where things stand. But it was tough the first couple months for sure. And then you got some success and then there's the peaks and valleys, right?
Like any other great business, there's a roller coaster ride and eventually it starts to kind of level out. So, I've been there before. I've had that conversation and, you're massaging two things at least, if not more. You're massaging the relationship and you're massaging like the future of that relationship, like the current status of it. And you're like communicating and then also making sure you set the foundation for the future and having that open door policy or conversation where you can say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. It's good that you have that dynamic where you check in once a week, once every couple of weeks. Cause when you're an entrepreneur and, she said she's an attorney, so she kind of has that same feel probably, but there's this idea where, I'm in a people-based business, but my business can get really lonely sometimes and it can get really quiet sometimes. And so if I don't have someone to download with or check in with, I mean, it makes the process a little bit more stale. So it's actually probably a good thing to have that. But I also wanted to touch on another piece of entrepreneurship that you brought up, which most people don't realize is what it actually takes to get started. I've had, clients, because I'm in the money business, I have friends and, I've been an entrepreneur a long enough time to know that generally when people say, oh, it's going to cost me, $50,000 to start this business, you want to at least 3X that. And this is just kind of a standard rule of thumb. I help a lot of people go into business and, what like you talked about with the forecasting numbers and projections, a lot of that is like great to have, but when the rubber meets the road, shit gets real quick and it changes. So what were some of the things that you saw when, first initially getting started, from cost of going into business and building out systems and operations to help you run your business? And then finally, after 7 months, getting that first client. Talk about that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a tough question. I think a lot of what entrepreneurs struggle with is, how do you bootstrap this thing? How do you get this thing moving? How do you finance it? Luckily for kind of me as well as my family, like, since I was 27, 26, 25, I was hyper-focused on no debt, paying things off, and did a pretty good job throughout my career. So, fast forward to, I think I was 36 or so when I started my company. I was in a pretty good position to take on some risk because of all the work that I did prior. And so, I was in a situation where I bootstrapped this company. But to your point, literally the amount of time it took me to find a customer was double, if not triple to what I thought it would be. And that's a really scary proposition. I mean, because a lot of folks come out, and you can read all the books you want to, but I literally thought, and I, listen, I've sold at a relatively high level, and I'm familiar with like sales cycles and what those mean, and like being realistic with yourself and all that jazz. But I mean, it's pretty scary when you're, 30, 60, 90, 120 days, 150 days out. And, still there's not, you're having conversations all the time, but nothing's really materializing. I mean, that's scary. And so, I think that's where a lot of companies actually, or entrepreneurs fail is because they think this is going to turn around in, a matter of a month or 2 months. And realistically, it comes down to, I think, perseverance, right? And just the ability to kind of fight through. And also too, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, literally the first 9 months that I started company, I've never been that stressed, I don't think, in my entire life. Now, it's a good stress, right? But anyways, getting back to the point at hand, there are a lot of costs associated. And I think it's one of those things where you can do all the forecasting you want to, but until you're actually in the trenches, it's hard to gauge what it's really going to take. And all businesses are different as well. Mine's a service-heavy business, and it's really heavily relationship-based. And so a lot of that time was creating relationships.
How much would you say, the idea of you going in to start this business was going to be X? How many times more than that first initial figure did it cost you to actually get it to where it was up and running and where like the business was moving?
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 5, so maybe 4 times.
Yeah, it's this weird number, and I've seen it, learned it, and I always tell people to plan on at least 3 times what your initial thought is. And there's unforeseen events, there's systems and things that you need access to. Every business thrives and lives on the life cycle of a sale and the blood of the sale, so to speak. Like that's the life of every business is obtaining sales. And sometimes your sales process, like you said, might take a lot longer. And sometimes the cost of acquisition might be a lot higher, right? Whether that's trading time or you're, spending money on leads or whatever that is. So how did you land your first client? What did that look like for you?
Well, before jumping into that, I mean, one of the cost of acquisition, though, is also mistakes, right? I mean, sometimes you put capital towards something that maybe doesn't, render the ROI that you thought it would because you got sold a bad bill of goods, or maybe you're bad at implementing it. I mean, there's a multitude of kind of scenarios that can play out that can take away from the cash. And I feel like I literally have gone through all of those, Jesse, right? It's been interesting. I'm kind of writing some blog posts on my journey to help folks, make better decisions. In regards to your question, you mentioned how long did it take me to find my customer, or how did that happen?
How did you actually land them? So just, was it, was it your ability to have conversations and build trust? Like, how did that first client come on board for you?
Yeah. So pretty interesting. I had this pretty relatively lengthy career before I jumped out and became an entrepreneur, but, and I grew up in Atlanta. I'm a native, which is a real weird thing here. There's not many of us. But I literally, the majority of my book of business was not in Atlanta. I spent my time in like San Francisco, Toronto, everywhere else, but Atlanta. And so when I started my company, literally sat down with my Rolodex, like, who do I know here? And man, I mean, literally influencers and folks that are, have small businesses. I really didn't know that many. And so my journey to acquire my first customer really was, guerrilla marketing, boots on the ground. I tried everything from, email marketing to attending trade shows, cold calling via phone. I mean, everything under the sun, and actually got my first couple of clients through those efforts, right? A combination of email marketing, phone calls, and just being persistent, right? But it took a long time. And also too, I had no brand equity. People didn't know who the hell the free agent was. I mean, they still don't, a lot of companies, right? They didn't know who I was because I wasn't working necessarily in Atlanta. I was everywhere else but. And so it took a while to get the first customer. When I did, it was glorious, right? But of course, I negotiated myself into a poor spot, which I think happens a lot as well with first-time entrepreneurs and getting a first customer.
For sure.
But it took a while.
So that first client, it's what did that feel like? Outside of the shooting yourself in the foot and like you could have done better. Like most entrepreneurs just have to build confidence over time, especially if they're consultants, to be able to, determine and feel comfortable with their fee and with what their value is. But in terms of just the feeling that you got after 7 months, what was that like when you landed that first client?
Oh man, we went to Sizzler. I mean, it was awesome. My wife and I went out, and the contract and the way that we work, it's the contracts are small, but the pays are generally on the higher end. So we knew what we were going to make and all that. But yeah, we went out to dinner, and it was kind of made a big to do about it, which was I think what we should do, right?
Where'd you go?
Local. I don't recall the restaurant, to be honest with you. Maybe probably a local one, and I believe it was just my wife and I. But it was a fun celebration. Got out. I paid for it with money from a customer versus from myself,
right?
Which is great. So it was cool. We made a big to do. But then, of course, you get the customer, and then you got to deliver, which is a topic probably for a whole another day. But yeah, no, it was a pretty awesome, pretty good feeling, especially when considering. Not only did it take me 7 months, but I also kind of created the infrastructure. I created all of this myself to acquire that customer, and then actually delivered upon what I promised I would. So beautiful. It was a pretty surreal experience.
That's awesome, man. Well, that you broke the ice, and you were able to land that first client, and celebrating the win is huge. Obviously, from practicality for business owners, you don't want to spend more money than you make on that client, right? Because there's so many other costs of doing business. But just to even treat yourself a little bit and to reward yourself, it makes a huge difference, because that's how humans are built. Humans have this, dopamine, serotonin little fix they need to get, and just making sure that you add value to yourself, and say, hey, you know what? I busted my ass for 7 months. I went out and, I got this client. Go out there and, take a loved one, take a friend or whoever it is, and get out there and really enjoy that. I think that's super important. So fast forward past the 7 months, landing your first client. Did you start to pick up a little bit of traction, and what did that look like in terms of your next few clients, and kind of moving through to how many years have you been in the business now with this company?
A little over 3.5.
Okay. So going from that 7 month point first client to how did it go in terms of scaling and picking up more clients, and where you're at today with the business?
Yeah, good question. No, it happened, I'd say, a lot quicker. And I think part of that is actually confidence as well, right? So you kind of acquire somebody, you validate your business model, you validate what you've been doing, you validate how you acquired the customer, kind of the pricing. And in my situation, I had to kind of, revamp and retool some of the pricing a little bit, right? I was a little anxious to get my first customer. But, you build up the confidence, you build the business model, and then acquiring customers 2 and 3, I feel gets a little bit easier. And so, yeah, over the course of, 3.5 years, definitely saw kind of the amount of customers I have. I don't want to say quite hockey stick, right? But definitely increased, as well as, of course, revenue and all other things associated with acquiring customers. It's gotten easier each iteration, each time, because you tighten up the message, you tighten up the pitch, you tighten up the deliverable, you tighten up how you do everything, along the way.
Yeah, man. You refine the process. You kind of cut out what doesn't work. You get leaner and meaner. You get more efficient. So you get into business 3.5 years later, and something that piqued my interest was you're starting to get these takeaways and these nuggets of wisdom that you're starting to kind of almost not have enough room for. So you're putting them out into a blog. So talk about that a little bit. I want to hear about some of the things, or if you haven't got started yet, but where are you at with that? And what are some of the messages and takeaways that you're able to deliver in that blog?
Yeah, great question. I mean, honestly, so, I feel like a lot of the books that I read, a lot of the podcasts I listen to, I mean, they're by these, these wizards, and it's not a lot of tidbits. I mean, it's not, there's no truth really to kind of what these folks went through. It's all about, hey, I scaled a company in a month to $1 billion, sold at $1 billion valuation and pocketed XYZ, right? I mean, none of that's not real for me, at least, or at least it's not.
Most entrepreneurs, that's not real.
Exactly. So what I'm really trying to kind of put together is, I don't want to say they're my memoirs, but, just some writings that will help kind of teach budding entrepreneurs or those that are in the trenches with me, some of the do's and don'ts. I've learned a tremendous amount, and I feel like if I can help some people short circuit or shortcut, the path to success, that excites me. Right. And so, one of the posts I'm working on right now that I hope to kind of, post in the next week or two is about, 365-day view, what not to do, basically. And just talks about, anything from it's okay to fire customers to, not, to negotiating. And negotiating is okay. You should negotiate. Negotiating is actually expected. Things like that where, not all customers are good customers, et cetera. Those are the types of things that I'm focusing on, that I'm trying to flesh out and share with the community. So people do learn, because I've learned kind of by school of hard knocks.
Yeah, so I want to talk about two of those things, and I want to get your point of view. But the firing customers, and then the negotiating. And so, I guess from my perspective, because I'm a relationship guy, and I've always been that person in any walk, way, shape, and form in life. And it's always about having a hand to shake, and a conversation to have, because you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you're in that room alone, it doesn't matter. So you have to have people
Yeah.
to be able to show up for. So firing customers is super important, and like the art of saying no, and there's a way to do
Yeah.
it, right? And so for me, I try to make sure that my onboarding process, it's very much like dating, in the sense of I'm bringing people into my business that I want in my business, that I know that are going to be good people, good human beings. That's like the first qualification for me in my business is this a good human being? If they're an asshole, or if they're super egotistical, or if they're a know-it-all, I don't want that person in my business, because I'm an educator and I have to teach them how to do things. And if they don't pass that PETA test, which is an old military term for pain in the ass, if they're a pain in the ass, I don't even want them in the business. So that first checkpoint, they have to get past that. So in terms of firing a client, a lot of times I don't even have to get to that point because of the onboarding process. So and we'll start on that point. So for you, when you get to a point of having to fire a client, what has that felt like for you? And what are some ways that you're like planning for that in the future, so that doesn't have to happen too much?
Sure. Great question. So first and foremost, I too have a no asshole policy. Like when I started my company, that's the one thing that I said, like, now that I'm in control, I can choose who I want to work with. And so literally, if I don't trust somebody, if I can't have a conversation with them, if they beat up on me, they're not somebody that I want to work with. I'm not the right partner for them. And I will actively say that and refer them to somebody else that may be a better fit. So I think that's important. Also too, though, I'm a glutton for punishment. And once I commit to something, I'm all in, right? If I give somebody my word that I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, like I'm all in, even to my detriment a lot of the time, right? And so with my first customer, that's kind of what happened. This is the first customer that I had, negotiated me into like a hole, if you will, and they just weren't kind of a good customer for me to have. And literally, I stuck with it, I'd say 4 to 5 months longer than I should have. And when I was sticking with them, it stymied all other things that I was doing. I was unable to focus on other customers. I was unable to focus on growing my company. It really put me in a hole. And I woke up one day and was like, what am I doing? Like, I've got to break free of this relationship, right? It's like being in a bad relationship. And so once I did that, it literally, it kind of changed my mindset with the whole dynamic between, customer and, supplier, et cetera. And really changed the dynamic of my entire company and the trajectory. Now, it set me back 3-4 months because I had to kind of fill the void and fill the hole that was left. But it was a tremendous lesson on kind of breaking free and the fact that not all business is good business.
This is true. Yeah, I like that point, that not all business is good business. And one of the most important mentalities is how you make your money is more important than the money that you make. Like if you can't put your head down at night knowing that you've done a good job, that you're ethical, that you're helping people, or you're just not happy in your business. Because what's the point of creating something that you're not happy with, and now you've created like Frankenstein's monster? Like now you have to live with this abomination that's like not serving you, right? So the second thing you mentioned that I like to talk about is negotiation. So what are some negotiation tips, tricks, or tactics that you've learned? And have you had any, readings or thought leaders that you follow for this? Or is this kind of like on the job experience? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of both, right? So throughout my entire career, I've always liked negotiation for whatever reason. It's always been interesting to me, through college, through my first job, second, third, fourth, fifth. And so along the way, I've always, read books. I can't think of the author, but Getting to Yes is one of the books that kind of sticks out in my mind is really a good book. And I think anybody who's in the business of negotiating or being customer facing should read.
Talk about that book a little bit, because I know about it, but for those that don't know about it, give like the context on that book.
Yeah, well, ultimately, the context of the book is around what the title speaks to, right? Getting to yes. And that, there's ways for you to get to a yes without even, always just saying, it's okay, Mr. Customer, I'll do this, right? And so it's kind of those things where you may give a little bit, but you want to get something in exchange. And so when I first started my company, I was so excited, so eager to get customers that I basically, even though my rate I knew was not awesome, I was taking it because I had to. Again, after I fired my customer, first customer, I kind of wised up to this whole dynamic. And so now, I'm fine with reducing my rate, but I do ask for something in exchange. And a lot of times what that is payment terms. So I may kind of reduce a little bit on my actual rate, but in exchange for that reduction, I expect to get paid a lot quicker than I would have historically.
Yep.
Right. And so again, it's kind of one of those things where I'll put some skin in the game, but my expectation is that they are as well. And again, if they're not willing to do that, they're not a good customer for me. I want somebody that customer understands that I need to get paid, but they also expect and demand, high quality from me.
It's two things. It's the law of reciprocity. Like on the front end, you're helping them because they're asking you to, but then also the other thing from a practicality standpoint, because that's like the woo-woo happy like spot, is the practicality standpoint is you're getting cash flow sooner, which for a business, that's the lifeblood and oxygen of any business or any family, unit, is having that cash flow come into your business. And it sounds like it's a good trade-off that, I've heard this really shitty term before, and I've actually heard this, and you may have heard this because you're around lawyers with your wife, and I think you said your dad was a lawyer or is a lawyer, but I've heard this term before that lawyers feel that like a good business deal is when two parties are mutually dissatisfied, like equally dissatisfied. And it sounds like you kind of circumvent that because you're giving them something that they want, but you're also getting something in return. So it's actually really good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you brought up something as well about cash flow. And I think that was one of the life lessons that I had as well to start my company, is about cash flow. Because previously, customer didn't pay us on time. No big deal to me. I'll still get my commission check and my salary, and my company would float it, right? But now all of a sudden, I'm on the front line, and I literally myself am floating these companies. And the float's real, y'all. Like the float's tough. And so what I found is, I'll reduce my rate. That's fine. But you need to pay me in a week or 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that offsets the float. That offsets the cash flow. And I think that's a way to kind of get to a yes and create a win-win. But it is interesting. And I think that's a big gotcha for people starting companies is cash flow. And, making sure that you have more money coming in than you have going out. And it's really easy to get caught up in investing. Oh, if I buy this email marketing tool for $10,000 a year, hey, I got on that one as well, right? But all my problems are solved. So there's a lot of factors, a lot of moving parts, and cash flow is critical for a small business.
Oh my goodness! So there's a couple points there that I want to dive into. So Warren Buffett's first rule of money is to never lose money. The second rule is the rule number one. It's kind of like the Fight Club thing. Like there is no Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club. It's the same thing with money. Like it's like you need cash and you need more of it than you think that you'll expect. So having that cash flow and understanding that you need to be taking more in than you're letting go out. I mean, it's such a basic concept, but so many entrepreneurs get it wrong because they get, for lack of better terms, they get honey-dicked into something that's like going to help them with their business. And you have to evolve and you have to keep learning and you have to keep growing. But the other piece of this conversation that you brought up is like, there's also doing too much of that where you're not actually building your business. Like, yes, you need to learn and you have to read the books or, go to the conferences, but there's those people that's all they do. And I've seen this before with friends and clients where they're going to the Grant Cardone 10X all the time and they're going to this over here and Tony Robbins this and all that stuff's amazing. And I do that stuff too, but I try to break it out like once a quarter or semi-annually. It's not like every week or every month, because unless you're actually getting a monetary return, like that stuff's just like a feel good. Like, and that's what you need that. But for me, I've learned to hack it. So like one of my hacks for that is Tony Robbins events are great for me because Tony Robbins has a book called Money Master the Game. And in the book, it talks about investment advisors, it talks about financial planning, but what it really talks about is only working with a fiduciary when it comes to financial planning. And I'm a fiduciary. So when I go into those events and I start talking to people, I'm like, well, what do you do? I'm like, have you read Tony's book, Money Master the Game? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's what I do. And they're like, oh, really? I want to talk to you. So getting clever about putting yourself, you said trade shows before, conferences, whatever they are, getting clever about going to where your clients are and being the oddball in the room. Like I'm not going there to sell, but those relationships happen organically anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a very, very interesting point. I think too, a trap that folks get into is outsourcing everything, right? I mean, like, hell, I have a consulting company, so I'm a big believer in outsourcing items. But, sometimes too, when you're the face of the company, you need to be out there. You can't just be at trade shows or email marketing. At some point, you got to roll up your sleeves, get a little dirty, and get out there. But you brought up a good point a second ago about being the oddball in the room. One of the things that I've kind of learned through the last 3.5 years is that a lot of being an entrepreneur is about promotion, right? And marketing. And of course, delivering your product and having, something that sticks out in the market is important. But also kind of positioning yourself as a thought leader, positioning yourself as the face associated with your brand and your industry is something that's critical, right? And I really, I'm still learning this. I'm no master of this. I mean, hell, you're a lot further down the path than I am. But I think it's important. And so for budding entrepreneurs, that's something that I would point out as well, is that, the best way to get your brand out there is not by having necessarily the best product, but being a personality or somebody associated with your industry and your space. And it really comes down to, trying to figure out and master marketing and promotion. And quite frankly, the last 6 months, 9 months, those are the details in the books that I've really dug into. It's like I put the entrepreneur books on the shelf because I'm learning that myself. And more so now, like, how do I actually do a better job of marketing and promoting my company, and both a way to get in front of people, but, not be cheesy about it. Right. But also, not to be so nonchalant behind the scene that, people don't know I exist.
Yeah, man. I could say for me, the podcast has done wonders, especially being in a highly regulated environment and, honestly, just being in a boring environment where there's a lot of financial planners out there that just, they're not exciting. It's like, and it's, you don't have to be exciting as a financial planner, but as a human being, these people have so many depths and shades to color to their life that they don't even show. And like, there's so many people out there that if they just, like you, talking about your blog or, a monthly newsletter or a podcast, like there's so many ways to put your stuff out there, where for me, this has been the best hack of my life, because I'm not talking about financial planning in like detail and boring people to tears. Right. I'm having conversations with amazing people like you that also, then it's like, well, tell me more about what you do over here. And it's been like the best business card I could ever have. Yeah. It's been insane. And so I would say for sure, from a marketing standpoint, and kind of really, because I'm a nerd when it comes to the marketing piece, is get on social media. You need to be all over LinkedIn, which is in my mind, social media now. And if you're not utilizing those tools, you're suffering. Because for me, I've gone, like you talked about, I've paid for the different things in my business. And I used to be in a financial planning side of my business where I was sending out mailers and I was doing events and all this BS that I hated doing. I didn't like doing that stuff, but because it was the status quo, it was like, all right, I'll just do this. But then you learn what you like to do. And someone that I used to be into pretty heavily, that I'm not so much anymore, but I think everybody might go through this phase, is Gary Vee. And Gary Vee talks about documenting versus creating and just putting out content. And like, once you can wrap your head around that, like, you're building a business. You know how many people would love to hear what you did today that like helped you move your business forward that you just don't even think about? Like, if you were just to document like a phone call session, like maybe not the context, but like fast forward through the thing and you're talking to like 100 people a day, like just put that content out and be like, this is what I did today. That's what builds your brand. And that's what people fall in love with is you.
Well, no, I totally agree. I think also, though, authenticity is something that has lacked in my brand and my company the last 3 years. And quite frankly, I don't associate with people that are not authentic. And so why would I expect that people would work with me if I'm, not being authentic on social media and with my brand, with my company, and who I am, actually. And so I think video is one of those things. Podcasting, even writing is a way to kind of express who you are. And it's funny, I came from a formal environment, and I literally and actively try to take the formality out of my writing, out of my speak. I'm still not who I am. Take the camera away from me with my friends and family. But, I'm working towards that, where I literally am, you get what you see. Yep. And it's funny how you get caught up in this whole business mindset about being this person you think everybody wants you to be. But it's really, go back to no asshole policy. People want to work with people they like, they trust, and they value. Yep. Right. And if you're not being authentic to yourself or the people you work with, they're not going to see that. And I think social media is a great channel. And going back to a point that you made about being a financial advisor, it's funny, COVID hit. And I've got like 50,000 financial advisors reaching out to me with the same message, same marketing. And first and foremost, I'm not going to do anything right now during COVID, right? I mean, I'm all cash. Like I'm not doing anything with financial advisors. But it's funny, it's the same messaging. And what I realized is that in my industry, even, I've been using the same messaging, the same pitch, the same service. I'm just, I'm one of many, which that's very hard to kind of stand out in a crowded market. And so again, being authentic, getting your brand out there, getting your name out there, it's critical to success. And the folks that are doing that, I'd say will find a higher level of success than those that are not.
And happiness, right? And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And it's the game's changed. Being authentic, being genuine, not trying to be something that you're not. Those were ways of the past because those were ideals of the past. But like, it's so different now. It's amazing. You could be yourself, and people want that more than they want the fake, persona. So
It's funny.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's funny to say that. Quick sidebar. So I just turned 40. So a lot of folks my age are. Thank you. But a lot of folks my age, they're all on social media. I am not on Facebook. I've never been on Facebook. I'm not a social media guy. I'm pretty private. But I'm also, I'm not prone to anxiety. I'm not prone to a lot of those things. And I'm definitely kind of an extrovert, right? But when it comes to social media, it's funny. I created my first video, and I still am not where I need to be with videos. I need to do a lot more. But it was the most anxious day of my life outside of asking my wife to marry me. Literally, I've never been that anxious. I had to get my wife to hit send. Or post rather on LinkedIn to post the video. I could not literally do it. It was the weirdest thing. And she was like, "What's the big deal?" And once she did that, it was kind of like, you know what? What is the big deal? If I can be myself, why can't I be myself in front of everybody else? And it's been an eye opener. So anyway, I wanted to kind of give a little bit more context there.
A great nugget of wisdom, because that's, for me, I had this podcast idea for at least a year before I hit record. And
it was tough. Me too.
It took forever, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I was called to it, but I was afraid because I had never done it before. And I'm not the type of person, even though I'm all over social media now and do a lot of stuff branding wise, like I wasn't that person that wanted to see myself on camera. Like I didn't want to hear myself talk.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little bit of uncomfortability, which you talked about, being, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's the game in life. That's how you grow. Once you stop growing, you get passed up and life gets really boring. Right. And so I think 100%. You're right on the money with that. So 3.5 years in from jumping without a parachute, and now it seems like you have a parachute that's it's working well for you, and you're landing and you're blossoming in your business. Where's the business at today in terms of 3.5 years, as far as what you've built, types of clients you work with, even delving into the industry a little bit more so people kind of get some context about that?
Yeah. So in regards to clients, it's funny, when I first started my company, we were jack of all trades, and a jack of all trades is a master of none. Yep. Right. And so I'd go out and I would try to pitch my company, and we do everything. Well, you can't articulate everything. You can't sell everything. And so over the last 2.5 years, I've kind of been able to distill that down to a few areas where I think we do a great job. Also too, in regards to the customers we call on, I was calling on a lot of different customers. One of the size customers I identified that I did not want to work with because of my past experience was, the Fortune 100, say. They're just too large, too complex, sales cycles too long. So I kind of knew that, when I started my company, have since tightened that up further. So basically, we call on technology companies exclusively with a product, software, or service that have revenues between 10 million all the way to 200 million. I have customers larger than that, but that's really our sweet spot. Quite frankly, I prefer to kind of work directly with the executive team versus middle management if I can. And that's simply for, easiness sake for all parties, and we can get things done a hell of a lot quicker. Right. And in that regard, we kind of focus on the sales, marketing, and technology side. So, really have kind of tightened up the what and the who, but it takes iterations. You come out the gates thinking, I'm going to do this. And then you hit the market and you really understand that maybe there's not a need for that. And maybe you can feather that in 3, 4, 5 years down the road. One more thing that I want to say is, at the end of the day, what I really tried to start with this company was I wanted to create like a virtual exchange. So essentially, double-sided marketplace, you have executive level subject matter experts. They go through our vetting process. They join our platform. Companies join our platform, and then companies can essentially, post out opportunities. I need a CTO for 2, 3, 6 months, and they could find the CTO within our network, right? So the whole reason I'm bringing that up is when I started my company, that's what I was focused on. And then I realized that wasn't going to make me any money in the short term, right? Fast forward 3.5 years later, and I'm finally about to launch that platform into the market next week.
Beautiful.
So, well, I appreciate that. We're gonna see what it looks like, right? But it's blood, sweat, and tears, and but the lesson here is adaptability and knowing when to pivot. One of the reasons it took me 7 months to find my first customers because I was focused on software, and then I finally realized, hell, I'm gonna put myself out of business.
Yeah.
And so I had to shift and put that on the back burner, and I've been working on that since. So that's kind of where I'm headed, what I've been working on. And finally, I get to realize kind of the fruit of my labor and my dreams. But hell, it's taken a very, very long time just to get this thing stood up.
Very cool, brother. I'm looking forward to seeing that and hearing how that does for you and for your business. And so for the people that are listening and watching this, what are one or two things that have really changed the way that you think about either life or business in terms of like books or thought leaders? Like, who do you listen to? Who do you follow? It could be a podcast as well, but like, what's really helped shape and inspire you?
Great question. I wish, there's not many folks that I tune into, honestly, from a podcast perspective. I'm an avid reader. I mean, right now I've got, 5 books on my desk. I mean, one of which is Explosive Growth, right? So a lot of the books that I read right now are catered towards marketing and promotion, et cetera. But there's not really any one thought leader that I tune into. I just, for some reason, I'm a big believer in learning and experiencing things on your own. Yeah. Right. And so, I don't have many that I follow, although maybe that's something I should try to change. Right. But as regards to kind of like my perspective, what I've changed this whole, journey. When I first started my company and prior to that, I was all about money. And that's important. That's a big driver here. But for me, it's quality of life. Right. And so that's something that when I'm working every day, again, money is a component to that. But my focus is on, quality of life, being a good parent, good dad, good husband, partner, et cetera. And that's kind of how my thoughts have changed where, I want to sell my company at some point. That's the goal. But, I really want to enjoy my life while I can. And we'll see if we can do those two things together. I don't know if you can yet.
No, you definitely can. And that's beautiful, brother. The point of being able to build a company to be able to sell it, like that's where most people's mindset needs to be, versus just kind of, you can let it ride until the end of time, or you can pass it down, but your thought process should be scaling it to be able to make it attractive enough to sell it. So, right. But the big thing there, brother, and closing on that with the quality of life, money is the tool, but the happiness is the end game. And that's more time with family. That's quality time with them. So you hit the nail on the head perfectly, brother.
Well, good. Hey, good. It's hard though, man. And many iterations and many failures, you kind of start figuring that out. What's important to you?
As long as you don't quit, and if you can survive the impact, I think that's kind of the secret sauce. But thank you so much for your time, Beau. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you pivoting from in person to the Zoom call, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you. He's the amazing, powerful Beau Billington. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of the Jesse T Show.